Tonight we have a feature pack show. Got lots of stuff coming up. Yes, good evening. It is Tuesday the 7th of October 2014 and you are watching Vapourscene here on Vapourtrails TV. And it's been news-wise, there's been quite a few stories, but the big story really is one that surfaced yesterday, and it's in relation to Totally Wicked. And they went to the Royal Courts of Justice and they've been given leave to take some action in the European Union, European Parliament and their courts to challenge Article 20 of the Tobacco Products Directive. And you can see there part of the press release very shortly. And it was also reported on the BBC News site in Lancashire. So I spent some time earlier on talking to Fraser, and this is what we said. The decision yesterday at the Royal Courts of Justice in London gave you leave to appeal the decision of the Tobacco Products Directive, specifically Clause 20. Is that correct?
Yes, it's the Article 20 that refers to e-cigarettes. We've been a number of arguments and contentions related to Article 20. And we have no responsibility to contend that the TPD in the round is incorrect. There's lots of good things the TPD brings, particularly for cigarette-related directive. But Article 20 in the round is just wrong, illegitimate, and presents e-cigarettes in the wrong way and regulates them in a way which will ultimately be detrimental to the sector and to the users. That's the basic contention that we have.
Part of the argument on the press release is to do with the unjustified competitive disadvantage. I'm just looking across there at the release. Unjustified competitive disadvantage to tobacco products and fails to comply the general EU principle of equality and breaches fundamental rights of electronic cigarettes manufacturers. Do you think it is possible that this is going to get a decent hearing next year? I rest under the premise that judges are objective, that they will consider and will apply their objectivity to arguments, and that when they judge, they're doing so impartially and based upon the evidence provided. And therefore, I think we will get a hearing which is legit. I think also, I think we have a very strong case because, as most people who are aware of what's going on in the past 18 months know, that there is major flaws with not only the legislation that was passed, but also the way we got there, the lack of objectivity that was applied to it, the lack of consideration of the evidence, the amount of lobbying which has been undertaken to disturb the process and to ensure that those who were influential were being matters or considerations which not as relevant as they ought to have been, or indeed were based upon misrepresentation. Yeah, we saw during the whole TPD process so much in a way of lobbying by the tobacco companies and from the pharmaceutical companies, and the vaping community was also accused of not being who we are, knowing too much information, and they didn't believe that ordinary people, ordinary vapers, could understand the processes and could understand the technologies. But you know, the community know a heck of a lot more than probably every MEP who voted on that piece of legislation.
Yeah. Well, I agree, Mark, and I don't ever suggest that the reason why the MEPs voted against the first article that was presented in late last year was because of things that we or other industry participants provided or supported. It was just as simple as the vaping community making their MEPs aware of what was happening and informing them of what they should be informed of, so they could make their opinion, stroke judgment on facts rather than what was being fed by the council of ministers and Ms McAvan and her related acolytes. And I think it was an absolute testament to the power of people, those who vote, in making sure that those who represent them were aware of what they wanted them to do and how they wanted to be represented. So I think it was a wonderful show of force and a show of solidarity, and actually a show of democracy working for once, that the voters, the people who legislation was being written for, who felt it would be adversely affecting to them, took some responsibility for themselves and actually were shown that that responsibility was well taken because people responded to it.
Things were railroaded very quickly through, and that things were changed at the last minute. But I think the lobbyists did the whole thing more harm than good. It was reported that Totally Wicked sent kits to all the MEPs. I think in hindsight that was a good or a bad idea.
Well, in hindsight and at the time, we all thought it was a good idea. There wasn't just me or anybody else in the business acting independently. We discussed it with our lawyers, with the PR support that we had, and it wasn't simply send a kit and some fluid to all MEPs. It was much more considered, and I think it has been represented as otherwise. I think it's a slight misrepresentation. We sent them a letter and a briefing paper, and the letter and the briefing paper introduced them to a number of the core arguments that we didn't think that they understood. We didn't think that they understood that an e-cigarette was not simply a ciggy-like. I don't think that the majority understood the concept of refillables and fluids, strengths, the varietals that come with that, and a basic second stroke, third generation product. So we sent the letter and the product and the briefing note to make sure that at least we had done what we thought we could and needed to do to get some information initially into the hands of the MEPs, which would hopefully put them at least in the context that they needed to be. We had only 3 of those returned from MEPs. We heard nothing from the other 745 or so, bar 2 emails that I received saying thank you. So it was tacitly accepted, and no great detraction or no great exception. But I think it's a misrepresentation to suggest that we simply sent e-cigarettes to MEPs. The e-cigarette was part and parcel of a much more considered approach, which was the briefing paper and the letter to try and educate. It wasn't some ridiculous marketing ploy that some would have suggested. I think people have to be aware that we've spent a lot of money on trying to influence this for not just our own reasons, but for our customers more importantly. And it would be crass in the extreme for us to use it as some kind of marketing ploy for short-term gain and derail a much more strategic intent.
I think the way it was reported at the time was mainly to move against e-cigs. A lot of things were said, and a lot of facts were misrepresented or cherry-picked, so it made the science go the other way, where we all know where the science is and we know where the truth is. And I think it was manipulated somewhat, and a lot more science has come out now and is being reported correctly. I think we're getting more favourable reporting by the media these days. However, they do jump on any issue at all, be it an exploding battery or fire caused generally 99 out of 100 times by user error. They jump on those and try and use it to make it look like it's an extremely dangerous pastime stroke thing to do.
I think it's more balanced, Mark. I think it's balanced not because I think there's necessarily a concerted media campaign to be more balanced. I think they're being held to account by the fact that they are being demanded to be more balanced by those people who are now much more aware, and in some part slightly held to account by the potential embarrassment that comes by making ridiculous statements which are so fundamentally in tension with the facts and the evidence. I think that's the most important thing that's happening, and something that we always thought would happen over a period of time. Go back 18 months, December 2012, when we first saw the draft TPD. And who would have thought that 18 months later we would be in a situation where there's been such a significant change to the landscape, and there has been positive change to the landscape, and a lot more educated and informed people than there were 18 months ago. I see that through the engagement we've had with MEPs and others, MPs who visited our business, and those in the media. I don't now have to start each discussion with a media representative with going over the very basics of e-cigarettes. They know those basics. They are also aware of some of the basic matters that define the performance of an e-cigarette compared to a conventional cigarette. 18 months ago, that wasn't the case. Nearly everybody I spoke to was still in the mind of whatever the mind was, which was these things are dangerous, they're worse than cigarettes, nicotine is going to kill you. All those fallacies that we've been trying to knock over incrementally for years were catalyzed in the debate that was around the TPD in 2013. So I think there's a lot more information, and that means that the media have to therefore convey that greater depth of knowledge, and there's also a greater depth of awareness in the user base and beyond who will hold them to account when they talk tosh. So I think that's happening naturally, and that's ultimately what I believe will prevail and win the day, which is that the genie is out of the bottle when it comes to e-cigarettes. There's 1.5 million people in the UK who use them routinely, and they don't want people to interfere in a life choice which they've taken themselves, which they know is very positive, and they've taken some control of their own destiny. Amazingly powerful, and that's the reason why people were so up in arms with the TPD in 2013, and why they were so strident and took some personal responsibility. So as much as the regulators would want it to be X, I don't think it can be X, because the users will demand it's going to be Y, and we're just assisting as best we can by bringing that to an objective place, which is a court.
We should be able to purchase these devices. I mean, Gen 1 even, Gen 2, but now a lot of people are now using Gen 3 devices. But you should be able to go into a shop and purchase one of these if you wish to, if you can purchase 20 packs of cigarettes.
Of course you should. Of course you should. And also, what we should recognise is that e-cigarettes apparently are being held to a different set of standards than conventional cigarettes. I think I understand that in part, but I also have to understand the subtext to that, which I won't accept, which is the availability of cigarettes is supported by every state in Europe. They may well wring their hands in despair at the pestilence it brings to society, but they still allow it because they take taxes from it, and they still allow them to be sold. So this acceptance of cigarettes, albeit with all its ills, is government sanctioned and European state sanctioned. So if they were really concerned about the health of the nations, then they've got within their gift to do what they want with cigarettes. They could ban them if they wanted to, but of course they won't, nor should they actually. I'm not advocating they should, because it's about personal choice, but they could if they wanted to. So along comes an e-cigarette, and here comes their opportunity to bully this new sector in the way that they probably would have wanted to bully conventional cigarettes, but never had the courage or the ability to do so. And that's where we find ourselves. We're this interloper in this this duopoly between pharmaceutical and tobacco products, which have always had their say over 25% of the population's habits. And we've probably taken away 15%. E-cigarettes, I'm talking about TW. E-cigarettes have taken away 15% of that ensconced user base. Significant amount of revenue loss, and let's not hide under anything other than a basic moral argument here. There's nothing immoral about what we're doing. We're offering a product which offers the first ever choice for those who smoke who wish to continue to recreationally use nicotine, a choice other than quitting. And that should be endorsed by all who have both the desire to have people making choices for themselves, and more importantly, be for those people who also wish to see the reduced risk of those dying from tobacco-related smoking. So the arguments, once again, going back to the first comments I was making about the arguments we put forward to judges in the European courts, is that the arguments are very simple. As long as conventional cigarettes are available, our products deserve to be available, and morally deserve to be available, and deserve to be given the ability to compete with conventional cigarettes. And that's all we're asking for. It's not complex.
So what's the next step? It's going to be heard in the European courts in 2015, is that right?
It is. We asked for expedition from the UK court, which is essentially the UK court confirming that they believe there is a need for this case to be heard immediately. That would have potentially meant that this case would have been heard before the end of the year. That wasn't given, but we still believe that we'll be given a suitably expedited track, which means that potentially in 9 months' time our case will be heard, so summer of 2015. And we need this to be heard as soon as possible, because there's a whole range of decisions that we as a company have to make, and indeed consumers potentially will have to make as a consequence as to what it means in the future, what it means for our strategic development of our business, the investment that we make, the position we take in the sector. This sword of Damocles hanging over our heads, and until that's removed or confirmed that it's going to fall, I can't really make any business decisions which are based upon evidential fact which I can commit to. So there's a lot of reasons internally for the business that I need this to be resolved quickly, but more importantly, our customers and those who also operate in the sector need this to be confirmed so we can make our own actions and define our own plans.
Yeah, I mean, there's many thousands of people employed in the industry, just in the UK. So that's many thousands of livelihoods as well, based, on this piece of ridiculous legislation. So hopefully things will happen quickly.
But it's also a bit of a, going back to that moral thing, Mark. It is just as important that it's heard irrespective of the commercial realities. It really is. And whether people believe me or not, it doesn't really matter whether they do, because I know why we're doing it. Others could have done it if they wanted to, and I'm surprised other communities or companies haven't started this action in Europe. But as far as we were concerned, Jason and I, when we discussed this a year and a half ago, I remember in December of 2012, when we first saw the draft TPD, we were committed to doing all that we could to, in our own modest way, prevent it from happening. We made that commitment to take legal action if we needed to all those months back, within a month of the draft TPD being released in December of 2012. So we've always been committed to this course of action. And we'll take it to its eventual conclusion. And I do believe that we'll be successful, because I can't believe that you can't see, or anybody who's charged with objectively looking can't see the basis of our arguments and justify that it's correct to do what we're doing.
The community as a whole, the 1.5 million and growing community who want to use electronic cigarettes instead of lit tobacco, are going to get a pretty raw deal if this goes ahead as it's been written.
Yeah, and that's the reason why we're doing what we're doing, Mark. And I wish he wasn't here, if I'm being honest. I wish I could spend the time that I need to look into the business and lead the business in the way that I would like to, but it does consume a lot of my time. 2013 consumed a hell of a lot of my time and a number of other members of the team in areas that I really would not wanted to have been involved in. But unfortunately, these things just won't go away, and if they won't go away by themselves, you've got to try and knock them over if they won't naturally fall. So yes, it is unfortunate, really. I don't take any great pleasure or satisfaction from having to spend time, effort and resources on trying to defeat the TPD, but we have to. And I wish it would just go away, but it's not going to, so we've got to try and kill it ourselves.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody wishes you luck with this action, and congratulations the fact that you've got this far, and getting leave to get this heard in Europe. Someone had to do it. Someone needed to do it, and you guys have done it now. So it's going to be a tense 9 months, I think.
It will, and I don't think we need to do much preparation any further. We've got our arguments framed. We've got a really good legal team. I'm just waiting for the date to be confirmed in court, and I think we'll be ready to go. The less time, the better. As I said, for obvious reasons, the more time we get post the judgment, the more we'll be able to address the things that we have to address. What's the outcome going to be? I don't know. If we're successful, what does that mean? I don't know. Could it be a risk that if we're successful in knocking over Article 20, that we go all the way back to the dark days of proposed medicinal regulation? I doubt it. That was defeated because he was wrong. And even the most flagrant, ill-informed opportunists wouldn't believe that we could go back to 2012 and have people like Mr. Mean dancing in front of our screens again. That's not going to happen. So I think realistically what we'd have is the European courts, if we're successful, asking for a new round of regulation to be considered where these products will be given their own regulatory space and for it to be properly, objectively and academically influenced, and to get suitable regulation which allows for the whole of the European community to regulate these products appropriately.
Well, let's hope that common sense prevails in the end, and we're watching this story with great interest as it unfolds over the coming months. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, Fraser. It was good of you to get on and make some time for us, and wish you all the best with this, and hopefully you can come back on and give us an update sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to, and thanks for the time to discuss this, and best of luck and best wishes to all you at Vapourtrails. Take care. Thanks.